Boker Tov, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Aliyah day. I am glad to be with you on this beautiful Yom Shani. It's the second day of the week, also known as Monday. And we are moving ever so closer to the celebration of Rosh Hashanah, the Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah, which is a week from today, actually. Rosh Hashanah being a week from today. Can you believe it? Already a week from today. We are going to have an amazing service. Of course, obviously, we'll have our Shabbat service as normal. And then on Monday morning is a Sabbath. Both Monday and Tuesday are actually Yom Tov. And so on Monday, we'll have our service, for Rosh Hashanah. It will be an amazing time for the blowing of the shofar. And of course, following Oneg in the afternoon, for those of you who are locally, we'll go out to a body of water and have our Tashlik service. So anyway, it's going to be amazing. Thank you for joining me. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe and be sure and click the little bell icon so you stay up to date on all the content that we have that's forthcoming. And also, if you have not subscribed to the Sar Shalom Synagogue YouTube, that's where we post the drashes each week. There's also some other teaching videos that are there. And we invite you then to subscribe to the Sar Shalom Synagogue YouTube as well. So there's two different channels, one for Lapid Judaism, which is where you are now, and then one for Sar Shalom Synagogue, the flagship of Lapid Judaism. We're just 74 subscriptions away from 1,000 subscribers on that channel. So wouldn't that be wonderful to be able to hit 1,000 subscribers before the weekends? And I think we can do that. So if you haven't subscribed there, please do so. And of course, we had yesterday the monumental, amazing, groundbreaking for the mikvah. It's just unbelievable that that project is coming to pass, and we will the contractors will be literally breaking ground on Thursday, and we'll be sure to go out there with some cameras and so on and take pictures during the entire process. And then, of course, when it comes time to open the mikvah, we will be sure and have the ribbon cutting ceremony, which I'm sure will be just unbelievable. So, Baruch Hashem. Parasha Nitzavim. We are in the book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 29. It's a very brief, just a couple of verses here. Just a couple of verses for our second reading. The third reading is a bit longer, so don't dismay. But this will give us a chance to catch up on some comments that were left over from yesterday. So we're going to find ourselves in chapter 29. The second reading begins in verse 11. If you have the Art Scroll Chumash, we are on page 1087. Now, I'm just going to lift up the Chumash here. I do this periodically because we have new people join us all the time, and so thank God for that. We would encourage you. I would encourage you to purchase a Chumash. It'll be a wonderful blessing to you, and you can buy this on the Art Scroll website, which has a plethora of books. And if you're like me, you'll become addicted rather soon. But it's a good addiction. In this case, the addiction is a benefit. And so it's artscroll.com. And so this is the book you want to buy right here. It's the Art Scroll Chumash. See, it says Chumash. Let me turn this to the camera there. The word Chumash looks like Chumash, but it's actually Chud. The CH in transliterated Hebrew makes a chet. It's a Chumash. So anyway, you want to buy this book, and it'll be a blessing to you. It has all of the parashot in it from the Torah, and also the Haftarah and the Megillot, along with rabbinic commentary. So it's very, very nice to have. Just wanted to show that to you for your benefit. You'll know which one to get. All right, so let's read our couple of verses here, and we'll get right to the commentary. Verse 11, for you to pass into the covenant of Adonai your God and into his imprecation that Adonai your God seals with you today, in order to establish you today as a people to him, and that he be a God to you, as he spoke to you, and as he swore to your forefathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Verse 13, not with you alone do I seal this covenant and this imprecation, but with whoever is here. This is a very important verse here. But with whoever is here standing with us today before Adonai our God, and with whoever is not with us today. All right. So before we get into the specific commentaries on that, let me go ahead and harken back to use Old English to the Kehot Humash, just a different type of Humash that has some really great introductory thoughts. And so we're just going to kind of work through these thoughts, and I'll comment on them as we go. So the first here, it says, a covenant is a bond of love that transcends rationality. A covenant is a bond of love that transcends rationality. So when we're in covenant with somebody, we should be able to work through difficulties, relationship difficulties. This will come as a shock and a surprise to probably all of you. But when you're in a marriage relationship, the husband and wife don't always necessarily like each other. There are times, and I know it's a shock. I know many of you are going, what? Say what? But there are times, when the husband and the wife just, they'd rather not be in each other's presence. And typically that lasts for a relative brief moment. And yet the relationship endures. Why? Because it's based on a covenant, not based on an emotion. And a lot of people in their spiritual life is based on emotions, how I feel, how God is, quote, leading me, how I felt led, and all those it's all about emotions. And we talked about this in a drosh fairly recently. I'm not sure if it was the week before last or before that. But anyway, I spoke from the Midrash Rabbah about how the righteous person controls his heart. The heart doesn't control the righteous person. So a righteous person is not led by their emotions. A righteous person is not led by their feelings or what have you, because many times our emotions can carry us away, and our feelings can lead us to make illogical and poor decisions, because we suspend logic, we suspend facts over feelings, for instance. To use a political analogy, now here in Texas, we have had a couple of really bad mass shootings recently. And so people have scurried about, they're in shock and awe. And they say, we've got to do something, quote unquote, do something, just do something. And that has led some people to say crazy things, but that's led some people to want to just do something just for the sake of something. When in reality, and it's heart-wrenching to see the tragedy, and it's gut-wrenching to see the tears, and it's terrible to see these things. And but we have to take a step back and use our heads and say, well, there's nothing to do. There is literally nothing that could have been done to prevent those tragedies, aside from parents being better parents and people not being insane. But there's no law, let me put it that way. There's no law that would have prevented those things from happening. For goodness sakes, the second shooter was pulled over by DPS agents, or DPS officers rather, state troopers, and he ended up shooting at the state troopers. So, I mean, that's how the whole thing began in Odessa. I'm just pointing this out, that a lot of times we're led by our emotions and not by logic. We're not led by logical thinking. And covenants are based on a bond of love that transcends rationality. I love you, even though I don't like you right now. I'm still in covenant with you because we're in covenant together. Hopefully all that makes sense. So it says, even though the rational reasons that foster love may be absent at some point, the parties to the covenant agree to continue loving each other nonetheless. That's the point I just made. So this is where people have gotten wrong theologically, because they say, well, God is angry with us, but it doesn't mean he doesn't love us. Same thing with a curse. People can't seem to rationalize. Well, wait a minute. If God curses us, quote unquote, then that must mean that we're no longer in the covenant. That's not it at all. We have to understand what it means to curse, because I think we have the wrong definition. If you, again, to use an analogy I've used so many times, but if you tell your teenager to perform a chore at the house, and normally if they perform their chores like they're supposed to, they receive an allowance of some kind. Okay. Well, if you come home and they have not performed their chores, they do not receive the allowance. That is a curse. Doesn't mean that you don't say, well, you know what? Pack your bags. You're no longer my child. You're no longer welcome in my house. Relationship is totally severed. In fact, I'm going to go out and find another kid and make him my teenager, and I'm going to release you. No, that is the whole purpose of the curse. The purpose of saying you are now cursed by not receiving your allowance is to make the child go, next time I think I'll do my chores so I can receive the blessing, that is the allowance, versus the curse, which is no allowance. It's really that simple. So anyway, it says the way we invoke this super rational attitude is in how God relates to us is by first invoking it in ourselves by cultivating our love for our fellow Jew, for our fellow member. So in a community, the way that we work on building such a covenantal relationship and covenantal mindset is that we focus on loving people because they're people, despite issues that we have with them or personality differences, that we appreciate them and value them as a human being and as a member of the community, as our brothers and sisters. And by the way, they're doing that for us too, because I know we don't like to think about it. We don't like to say it, but our personalities are not always perfect either. I know. You're thinking to yourself, what? My personality is great. I know, but some people have to put up with our personality as well. I have said before that as a rabbi, I feel convinced that I'm not everybody's cup of tea. It just is what it is. I wish it wasn't the case, but it is what it is. Nevertheless, we have to work on loving each other because we're each other and we're a part of each other. So anyway, it says, by loving each other, even when the rational reasons that would foster such mutual love may be absent, we are manifesting our super rational relationship with our fellow Jews. We are thus taught that loving our fellow Jew is the highest expression of our love for God. This is exactly what the Messiah taught. This is another example of how Yeshua lived Judaism. His religion was Judaism, 100%. Why do we know that? Because, well, there's many reasons we know that, but one of the reasons we know that is because he confirmed Jewish thought. He confirmed Judaism. And he says here, he tells us that if we really love God, then that will be expressed by our love for our fellow man. This is why he said that, you've fed me, you've clothed me. And the righteous said, well, what do you mean we've clothed you? We've fed you. We visited you when you were in prison. When were you in prison? And those kind of things. We don't recall doing that. And he said, well, if you've done it to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to me. So when we clothe our brothers and when we love our brothers and when we visit our brothers in prison or sickness or whatever, it is as if we've done that to Hashem. What I just said is not monumental. It's not like what a deep revelation that is. Oh my gosh, I've never heard that before. Again, this is things that we need to constantly and frequently bring back to our remembrance to help us understand the importance, because life distracts us very often and we forget the importance of that, and we let people's nuances and what have you make us not value them and somehow or I should say very often, get us off the derrick. So it says, to continue the sentence, I have loved you, says God. And in the words of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Leade, it says, if we truly love God, we love what he loves, the Jewish people. Think about this just for a moment. If we truly love God, then we love what we love. We love what he loves, the Jewish people. Thank you, Mikhail Khan. I am Mikhail Khan's cup of tea. Hoorah. Toda rabah. Anyway, let me just bring this home in a way that we can all understand. Because many people say, I know I really love God, but I hate the rabbis. I really love God, but I hate rabbinic Judaism. Some people think that they love Israel, but can't stand Jews or Judaism. That's an oxymoron. Okay. That's anti-Semitism. Imagine if somebody came up to you and said, Hava, I really, really like you a whole lot. You're one of my favorite people here in the synagogue, Hava. And Hava says, thank you so much. That's such a sweet thing to say. And the person says, you're welcome. You are. You mean a lot to me. But I just need you to know that I hate your kids. Your kids, I can't stand them. They drive me crazy. I just have nothing good to say about them. I love you, but your children, I hate. What do you think would be Hava's reaction? What would be your reaction? We all know the answer. So when we say, I love God, I just can't stand so-and-so, that's the problem. And it's something we all need to work on. Everything I say is something we all need to work on. And we need to work on it because we're human beings. And that's where the work on comes from. But anyway, so it says here, to continue the thought, nonetheless, the mere sentiment of love, however praiseworthy, is not enough. The sentiment must be translated into action. Love that as well. That love is an action. Yeshua taught this. He said, if you love me, then you will obey my commandments. So love of God is expressed in a verb and an action. And so if we love people, then we have to do things that indicate that we do in fact love them. And there's many, many ways that we can accomplish that goal. Serving at the synagogue, for instance, is one of those ways. Greeting people, serving in the synagogue, greeting people, helping out in the kitchen, being a part of the safety team, being part of the music ministry, children's ministry, youth ministry. All those things are expressions of love. Anytime we serve someone, that's an expression of love. And you can say, well, I don't really necessarily, feel connected or like every single person in the community. Well, that's not the standard, because, as human nature goes, not everybody in your community is going to be your BFF. But we can still love them. We can still appreciate them. We can still honor them. We can still be cordial with those people. We can still have relationship with them. It may not be a super close relationship. And that's just reality. That's just the reality of life. But the main point here is that love has to be an action. It has to be something that we do. So again, saying here on the concept of new covenant, there's another comment here where it says Moses begins to describe the new covenant. Just want to point that out again. We talked about that at length, that new covenant does not imply, it never implies in Judaism, it never implies a rejection of the quote unquote old covenant. So here it says another thought. How can we truly unite? How can we truly unite? How can we truly stay in unity? And so the Kehol Tumash presents a few ideas. And so let's just kind of work through these. It says, how can we truly unite? After all, the Torah itself implies that there are differences between Jews. There are some who are leaders, some who are water drawers. So the question becomes, what can a prestigious leader and a rank and file Jew possibly have in common? And so here's a few thoughts. So the answer to this, they say, is threefold. So let's go through them. First, the question is offered: who is to say who is ultimately higher on the ladder of achievement? Absolutely. Who's most important in the synagogue? We talked about that yesterday. People might say, well, the most important person is the rabbi in the shul. Maybe. But I would submit that maybe the person who greets at the door is more important. Maybe the person who's standing watch and security, protecting lives, is more important. Maybe the person who took out the trash the day before and tidied up the restrooms is most important. Who's to say who's really more important? Can the hand say to the heart that, it's more important? Who knows? So it says here, appearances can be deceiving, and we tend to over-evaluate ourselves while under-evaluating others. That's true. We tend to over-evaluate ourselves and under-evaluate others, and that's just one of those other things. It's to work on during these days of teshuvah, is to put ourselves in proper perspective. We should always think of ourselves as lower than others, that our gifts are not as good as others. We should really, really and sincerely work on having that attitude. So it says, secondly, even if we have evaluated ourselves correctly, just because we are a leader in one particular aspect of life does not mean that there are not other aspects of life in which others are leaders. That's absolutely true too. I am not good at everything, and I don't even pretend to be good at everything. There are things about which I know very little, and I don't pretend to know much in those areas. And it's great to say, you know what, that is not my expertise, and I defer to someone else. And that even happens with matters of Judaism. If you want to know about gematria, you need to talk to a Met. Really, if you want to know about those kind of things, that's the person you want to go to. A Met, that's his gifting. He's particularly gifted in that area, and that's what you want to know. That's where you go. So it says, in truth, everyone is completed by his fellow. That's also so critically true. We need each other. We provide critical support to one another. In the military, supply was not as glamorous. I hesitate to use that, I guess, but was not as glamorous as combat arms. And yet, when we were out in the field and we saw the food trucks show up and the supply trucks show up with new MREs or even better, hot food, those guys were like angels to us. It was like we wanted to hug their necks, and whatever. Glamorous, whatever. Without them, we would be starving in the field. So everybody has their role. So it says everyone is a leader in some way, and therefore the perfection of the Jewish people is dependent on the inclusion of every Jew in the collective body. Man, that is so good. And the tendency is, human nature is for us to think that our gift is the most vital. That is just human nature, and it's something we have to resist. And we have to be particularly careful of not being condescending or critical of others that don't see what we see. Like, for instance, you walk into a synagogue and you say, man, I can't believe that they don't have a real vibrant youth ministry, because your passion is youth ministry, right? And you walk in and you walk into a synagogue, to a Lapid synagogue, and you say, man, I can't. Oh man, don't they get it? Don't they see? Blah, blah, blah. And Hashem whispers in your ear and says, no, they don't. That's why I sent you. So your mission is not to go in there and be critical. Your mission is to go in there and fill a gap. And so we have to be very careful that we don't think that our gift is the most important gift, because it's not. Everybody's gift has equal value. So it says, thirdly, the conceptual distance between any creature and the creator is infinite. Thus, when we set out to evaluate ourselves in terms of our relationship with God, it says the profundity of our own worthlessness in the face of God's absolute reality will neutralize any presumptions of superiority we may entertain vis-a-vis another person. In other words, what are we? Nothing. And so therefore, when we think ourselves above someone else, let's just remember that we're nothing, right? So this is what it's saying, is that compared to God, we're nothing. And so therefore, everybody's above us ultimately, because who are we? So it says we will be so overwhelmed by our own smallness that such a comparison will seem preposterous. And of course, let us not forget that the gifts that you and I possess, and we all have gifts, but the gifts that you and I possess come from Hashem anyway. And it's He that empowers us to use those gifts. And at any moment, we could lose the gift, or it could go away, or anything, God forbid, anything bad could happen. So again, this is just today really is a lesson in humility. It's a lesson in love. It's a lesson in covenant, what it means to be in community with each other. So a few more thoughts here on this line. It says, we need every individual, right? We mentioned this yesterday. We need every single person. To use a military example again, you talk about an army, and let's use an example from ancient times when in an army you had swordsmen, and you had spearmen, and you had axemen, and you had archers and cavalry, and you had the guys that were in the back with the catapults. Every one of those pieces of equipment, every one of those positions, they're all necessary. You can't win a battle with just one element. So we all need each other. We all need our particular gifts, our particular vantage point, and we need to be in unity together. So here's another thought here along those lines. It says, nonetheless, in such a union, each individual remains aware of himself or herself as an individual. My father introduced to me a book a number of years ago called You Are the Message. And the author's name escapes me at this very instant. I apologize, but can't think of the author's name all of a sudden. But anyway, it's a good book. It's called You Are the Message. And some people, when they're nervous to speak on camera, and what have you, and I often will say to them, you are the message, so don't be nervous. In other words, be yourself, because people are interested in who you are. Yes, we are a part of the community, and yet we are important as individuals as well. Don't try to be somebody else. Be who you are, because Hashem created you for your specific mission. And if you try to be someone else, then you're going to lose sight of your purpose. That doesn't mean that we don't, try to aspire and look at someone as an example. That doesn't mean that. I mean, certainly we could do those things, but the point is that you have individual giftings, and you can maintain your individuality in community. That's the mystery of it all. So just to round out this segment, it says, a yet higher unity results when each individual feels as though he is a part of a collective body and a well-functioning body. Not only does each limb make a unique and indispensable contribution to the well-being of every other limb, the individual limbs have no real significance outside the context of the body. That's another great thought, that we are individuals. We're individual limbs, as it were, individual parts of one body. But this is, again, the importance of community, because outside the community, our particular gift doesn't have any real relevance. What we have to offer is only valuable in a setting in which we can offer it. End of our Aliyah today. Thank you so much for joining me. It is a blessing to have you, and I hope you've been blessed. Please subscribe to this channel and to the Sar Shalom Synagogue channel and click the bell icon on both of those. And please be sure to like this video and share it with all of your friends, because your efforts in doing that helps the light of Messiah shine and the light of Lapid Judaism shine all over the world. So it's very, very important, and it makes a big difference. So thank you so much. God bless you. With Hashem's help, we'll see everybody tomorrow.